Hey, welcome everybody to our second day of the Joint Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee. Let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Senator Brennan,
Excused?
Senator Furphy.
Here.
Senator Kolb,
Present.
Senator Pappas.
Here.
Representative Berger,
Here.
Representative Nemec,
Here.
Representative Obermueller,
Here.
Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Pendergraft,
Here.
Representative Smith,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Wiley, Chairman Boner,
Here.
Co-Chairman Brown.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, so today is our Transportation Day. Looks like we got a lot of folks from Wyandotte here, and just a reminder to speak through the chair, keep focused on the topic at hand, and we'll have an efficient and thorough meeting. So first topic we have, Mr. Co-Chairman, you good? You got anything or?
Go Pokes.
All right, yeah, it's a sheep week, so see how long this meeting lasts, and I think, well, that's tonight, so yeah. So, okay, so yeah, like I said, we'll be thorough and efficient. So Director Westby, welcome. Looks like you're ready to go, and we also have our first topic of the day, which is fuel tax administration, information compliance. So we'll have LSO go ahead and give us the summary here.
Yep.
And
So,
Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, colleagues at the Legislative Service Office this semester are teaching a legislation practicum course at the University of Wyoming College of Law. And as part of that practicum, the students in the course have had the opportunity to draft bills. And today, for this first bill for 24 LSO 272, one of those students has drafted that bill and is here to present that to this committee with the co-chairman's permission. So I'm pleased right now to introduce Mr. Chairman, Catherine Cleave. She's a third-year law student at the College of Law, a native of California, graduate from UC Irvine with a degree in political science, and she will present this next bill to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Cleve. Welcome to the committee, and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Brian said, my name is Catherine Cleave. I'm a third-year law student with the Legislative Practicum. Mr. Chairman, you and the committee have a memo regarding 24 LSO 272 on the origin of the 10-day period. There has been a new development since that memo was written. We discovered that a legislature introduced the amendment to House Bill 7 from Joint Transportation in 1997. And that was adding the 10-day period to requests for information. However, there was no reason given for why the 10-day period was introduced in the first place. The 10-day period then passed in 1998 for the gasoline and diesel fuel taxes under House Bill 7, later Session Law, Chapter 51, as amendments to the existing tax statutes 39-6-208 and 39-6-907 respectively. All right, and now the new statutes that were created during the recodification process of 1998 under House Bill 82 were 39-17-107 for gasoline and 39-17-207 for diesel fuel taxes. These did not originally have the 10-day period. That was later incorporated after the old 1997 statutes were repealed by the same bill. Then in 2015, the 10-day period was created for alternate fuel taxes in 39-17-307. The fuel tax periods have also always been 10 calendar days, and since they were enacted in 1998 and 2015 respectively, they have not been amended at all. If there are no questions, I will proceed to the bill draft. All right, so bill draft 24- LSO 272, this is the fuel tax licensee information deadline, working draft point 4. On page 2, line 12 and 13, 16 and 17, 39-17-107C2 has been amended to change the 10-day period to a 15 business day period for the gasoline tax. On page 3, line 9, 10, 13 and 14, 39-17-207C2 has been changed from the 10-day period to 15 business days. X. On page 4, lines 6 through 7, 10 through 11, 39-17-307C2 has been amended to change the 10-day period to 15 business days for the alternative fuel tax. This deadline will apply to information requests that WYODOT makes on and after the effective date, and the effective date would be July 1st, 2024. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions on the bill draft? Hey, thank you very much. Okay, next up, looks like we have Director Westby. Come on down.
Good morning, Chairman and Committee. Darren Westby, Director of WYDOT. Had a wrong name tag on earlier this morning. Thanks for not noticing. Those that have talked to me, old jacket, old name tag. So thanks for bringing this forward. I think we've testified on this a couple times now. I don't know that we have a whole lot more to add, but would stand for any questions you might have on impact.
Sure, yeah, just maybe give the committee a reminder what the purpose of the bill is, you know, what the reason for it, what we're trying to solve here. That'd be good.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dennis Byrne. I'm the Chief Financial Officer with WYDOT. So the genesis of this really was industry approaching WYDOT and asking for a little bit more time in terms of getting their fuel tax returns to us to be able to be processed. We met with industry several times, had some really good conversation. I think at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, we think that the 15 business days is just fine. It provides us still ample opportunity to be able to process the returns as we need to, and it provides industry the opportunity to really give them a little bit more time. We're really talking about some mom and pop shops that don't have the resources to readily get this information to us in a very short time frame. So at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, we are fine with the 15 business days. And to my left, we have the fuel tax folks. Do you folks have anything else to add? So with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for WYDOT committee? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any additional public comment? On down, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Dallas Scholes. I work with Par Pacific Holdings. We own the Wyoming Refining Company in Newcastle, Wyoming. I just have a very brief statement. I just want to thank WYDOT for their cooperation in all this. We did have some big concerns. We only have a couple people that do all of our tax responses and all of our taxes across our company. And the 10 business days was getting to be kind of hard with holidays, funerals, other things coming in. And from the very start, the governor's office, Dennis Byrne, Wayne Hassinger, Kimberly Peters worked with us very well, very cordial. And I just wanted to thank them publicly for that.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Thanks for coming down. Appreciate it.
Yep. Any further public comment on this matter? Anybody online? Okay, going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, moved by Representative Wiley, seconded by Senator Pappas. Any discussion, committee? This is a tough one, you know, so any discussion? Okay, let's go and do a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote for 24 LSO 272, fuel tax license information deadline. Senator Brennan? Aye. Senator Furphy? Aye. Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Pappas? Aye. Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Nemec?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Boner, Co-Chairman Brown. 14 aye.
Okay, well, now we're ahead of schedule. Good job, everybody. Let's
Show me up there,
move
Chairman.
on. Well, let's not get overconfident. So next up, we have fuel tax and user fees. Just to set this one up a little bit, this was a part of our assignment as a committee to assess. The concern here is that you have a lot of out-of-state, especially commercial traffic that is impacting our roads. And the concern is that Wyoming drivers are in fact subsidizing them. I think we heard some testimony that registration fees are above the average for, especially in the northeastern part of the state in particular. And of course, if you decrease the registration fees, you increase the fuel tax with the goal of being neutral to the average Wyoming driver. And those are the bills we have here before us. Some people are going to be impacted negatively, others will be impacted positively. That's the overall goal. So we thought that this would be a better idea to explore than say in putting on a toll road somewhere or just increasing the diesel fuel tax outright. So it's up to you, committee, whether we got there or not. Going into the budget session especially, and we'll have a discussion as to the fiscal impact, and we'll have a discussion as to whether, I think it was Labor and Health that started the phrase, is the juice worth the squeeze here? And so we'll have that discussion, but just important to remember what the intent is here. And like I said, we can have a good, robust discussion about whether we achieve the intent or not. So that, Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And Mr. Chairman, would you like me to present both bills now or take them one at a time?
Let's just do one at a time. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 24 LSO 270, working draft 0.5. This is 10-01 in the meeting materials, diesel highway user and registration fees. This is a bill draft that the committee requested in September. The motion that the committee adopted was to increase the diesel fuel tax by a certain amount and reduce the state vehicle registration fees by a certain amount to achieve that the term used was a net zero effect. So what this bill does that. Before jumping into the bill, the staff comment on pages 1 and 2, and then I'll highlight a couple of other items as well. To try to get to this net zero, there are numerous variables involved with particularly diesel vehicles. There are exemptions that may be available for some of these vehicles. There are vehicles for which WYDOT does not have information on the fuel source, for which we attempted to account for those. The one important piece, though, here is that as drafted, the bill does not take into account apportioned vehicles. So those vehicles that only pay a pro rata share of the registration fee in Wyoming, and then also pay certain shares in other states where those commercial vehicles operate. Including them in that bill draft, there are folks far more knowledgeable in here who can really get down into the numbers, would require a change to the diesel tax increase amount in the bill. The only other item that I would mention, Mr. Chairman, that is not accounted for in this bill draft is this question of distributions. So under current law, the diesel fuel tax, 75% of that is distributed to the highway fund. For state registration fees, 100% of that fee is deposited into the highway fund. So this bill does not account for that discrepancy either in terms of achieving a net zero effect on kind of the backside, is what I would say. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll jump into the bill. Simply put, what the bill does is basically decrease diesel-powered vehicles registration fee, the state registration fee only, to 0, and it increases, and that's referenced in the changes on page 3 for passenger cars, school buses, non-commercial vehicles, which in this case are pickup trucks. Those fees are changed to 0 on page 3. On page 4, lines 6 through 10, that decreases the registration fee for commercial vehicles to 0. And then on page 4, line 16, The total tax on diesel fuel is increased from 24 cents per gallon to 28 cents per gallon. I think that the way the math works out as drafted to achieve, I guess what I would call a net zero, is actually a 3.5 cent, give or take, increase. I think it's up for the committee to decide if the committee would want to impose a tax in a half-cent increment or round down or up. That's, I think, squarely within the committee's consideration. And then page 4, line 20 to 21 is just a conforming change for the amount of the diesel gas tax. The bill would be effective July 1, 2024. And then, Mr. Chairman, in addition to this bill, LSO budget fiscal, given the complexity of this bill in particular and the request, went above and beyond. My colleague from Budget Fiscal, Taylor DuPont, prepared a memo for the committee that is, I believe, 10-02, and it basically explains how we reached the figures that are used in this current draft of the bill. Mr. DuPont is gracious enough to be here today if there are any questions about that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions on the bill.
Any questions on this particular bill? Focuses on diesel fuel and diesel vehicles. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Appreciate it. Next up, we got YDOT.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, Darren Westby, Director of YDOT again. Interesting bills that we've been working over the interim on its impact and its net zero. I want to make sure that we have the discussion. I'll let Dennis and Taylor go into more impact, but the net zero was to Wyoming residents, not the net zero was not to YDOT. I wanted to make sure that was clear because I think the push was to try to find funding for I-80, I think was the topic. So I appreciated you clarifying that up front and making sure the net zero piece was in that context. So I appreciate that.
Right, and so just to be clear, maybe I didn't mention it, the idea is that Wyoming residents pay Wyoming registration fees. Everybody pays fuel tax. Therefore, if we reduce registration fees, increase the fuel tax, then we might see a net gain to YDOT, but then of course that's largely negated by the way we do diesel fuel taxes, right? So anyways.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll turn it over to Dennis and Taylor to go through impacts.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and committee. Again, Dennis Byrne, CFO for YDOT. Mr. Chairman, just maybe for clarification, and we're certainly not attorneys, but our interpretation of the bill on page 4, lines 6 through 10 actually take, in our reading, so we're just asking for clarification here, in our reading of the bill, it actually takes the registration for those commercial vehicles or the prorate to 0. That's how we are reading that paragraph. So with that in mind, Mr. Chairman, we went ahead and put some analysis together. You folks have that in front of you. It looks like this. You'll have 3 sheets that look like this. So I'll point you to the document that says 24 LSO-0270. I'll give you a minute just to find that on your desk there. Mr. Chairman, as you locate that document, what we did was we estimated the vehicle counts and the revenue that would be lost as a result of the change in the registration fees in this document. So that total revenue, accounting for the state fees on both the table located in 31.3.101 and 31.18.401, those are the tables that dictate the rate for the vehicles. The total loss, as the bill is written and as we are interpreting it, would be about $27.5 million. So that would be the revenue lost. So you can see in the second section of boxes there, it's just a repeat of what you folks already know. Every penny of diesel, also known as special fuel, generates about $2.64 million of revenue. So if you do the math, minus 27 million on the reduction of the revenue in the box below it, plus the 4-cent increase on diesel just below that the 4% or the 4-cent increase on diesel would account for about $10.5 million of revenue. There would be a net revenue loss of $17 million as the bill is written, Mr. Chairman. So we went ahead and did some further analysis. And basically to break even, you'll see this at the bottom of that sheet, we would need to increase diesel fuel tax or special fuel tax by 10.43% or cents, excuse me, or essentially 11 cents. So we don't do fraction of pennies. So it would have to be increased by 11 cents just to basically keep WYDOT harmless and to give the reductions in the registrations that the bill calls for. Again, Mr. Chairman, that is based on our interpretation of the reading of the bill. And I would turn it over to Taylor if he has any additional comments. He's trying very hard not to talk much today, Mr. Chairman.
He's got a game to go.
Okay, so any questions for YDOT committee? And, okay, go ahead and go ahead, Senator. Yeah, go ahead, then we'll get to Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this include the appropriated vehicles in the state of Wyoming, this law? So that, okay, so if, I guess my question is this, is that if the vast majority, just use rough numbers here, 90% are not in state appropriated vehicles. So if we subtracted the appropriated vehicles out of this that are, just subtract the appropriated vehicles, what do those numbers look like then? That's my, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Good question, Senator. And so if you go back to that box at the top, and what I assume your question to be is that those fees found in 3118-401 are not impacted at all. They stay as they are today. I think that's the question being asked. If you go back to the box at the top of the sheet that I provided you, the actual state revenue loss or from the revenue decrease would be $9.5 million. So you would see that under the passenger car, truck, UW alumni, handicap, county commercial with a grand total of 9.5 million. And so 9.5 million, you can do the math, which I can't do at the moment. Let's call it 4 to 5 cents, Mr. Chairman, if you're just talking those fees under 31.3.101.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But you'd have a benefit of the fuel tax increase for the appropriated vehicles, though.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that correct? I mean, I'm just asking that open-ended question.
That is correct. Thank you for bringing that up, Senator. We would have the benefit of the increased fuel tax. So it would be the 4 cents times the, again, it is. So it would be the 4 cents times the 2.6, which would be, oh yeah, it is. Sorry, excuse me. So it'd be 10.5 million. So there'd be a difference, a positive increase of $1 million for us, revenue.
Thank you.
Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to wrap my head around the numbers. They're important to me. Can you tell me in your calculations, did you come up with a number as far as how many gallons of diesel fuel, for example, are sold in Wyoming in a year?
Mr. Chairman, we have that information, but not with us today.
And so I'd direct the committee's attention to this handout that we got. I find it to be useful at the bottom here where some, okay, right. Yeah, but for everybody's, benefit, I think that's a good high level kind of summary of what we're looking at. And you see, the 3-cent increase in fuel taxes for both, and this has gas and diesel, would have to have a corresponding decrease in registration fees of $7.66 for gas, almost $20 for diesel, and that would net WYDOT 5.7 million, right? So those are the numbers we're talking about, and that's in context of what's the appropriation for the highway fund right now? roughly?
Our total budget,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, is around 900 million a year.
Okay, so that's, I probably should have done that right out the gate there. So that's what we're looking at here in terms of the, impact relative to the highway fund and what we'd be looking at, to keep the average Wyomingite, net neutral there. And that's based off of the calculation on page 2 of average number of miles a passenger car puts on, and not average number of miles a person drives, right? Because some people have more than one vehicle, but the average number per vehicle, miles driven, and the average fuel efficiency, and that's what we use to come up with those numbers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. So hopefully that was helpful for me. I thought we'd highlight that. So any further questions? Why not? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, any public comment?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, members of the committee. Sheila Furch, Wyoming Trucking Association. Both of these bills, and I'll just talk about this one, but just kind of as an overview, doing the registration reduction is much more palatable than what you were considering last meeting with the credit and refund and having to perhaps outsource it or add additional employees. So, that's a better approach, but my board still does not support this bill. We don't support a diesel-only bill. We don't support diversion of revenue currently going to this Department of Transportation's Highway Fund, and this bill does that. The commercial vehicle registration fees in the state of Wyoming right now are the 7th highest in the nation. So this would have a dramatic effect on registration fees for commercial vehicles, but that's not something we're asking for because my members feel strongly that that's a very strong portion of what's funding the state of Wyoming. I know that there's a difference between commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles. The highway portion of a commercial vehicle is much higher than a passenger vehicle. So that is a much more dramatic effect for a commercial vehicle, but we're not up here asking for a reduction in our registration fees. We feel that's an important part of the fair share that we do provide based on the commercial vehicles that travel the state of Wyoming. And it is important, and I know you guys understand this, but I always have to say it. Those trucks that are traveling through the state and not stopping and perhaps not purchasing fuel in the state of Wyoming, you are still receiving fuel tax from them, and you are still receiving registration fees based on the state's fuel tax rate and based on the state's registration fees. So it's not like they're traveling scot-free. You are receiving money from them. And that's an important factor because I think that sometimes gets lost in the conversation. But at this point, we are not supportive of this bill.
Any questions, committee? Okay, thank you
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Chairman.
Appreciate it. Any further public comment? Welcome, sir. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony. Is your microphone on, sir? No.
Okay, there it goes.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead and start over there.
Excuse me, I'm Aaron Nab, 2024 candidate up for Cheyenne Mayor. I come to this committee today to oppose this, once again, proposed fuel tax increase. I am someone that could benefit very well if fuel taxes in Wyoming were raised because of my background and knowledge of the fuel industry while utilizing resources that I've acquired over the years. But instead of living with greed and selfishness, I have chosen to live a selfless life with providing knowledge and perspectives when needed. When I was the fuel sales manager at a co-op out of Nebraska, my office was out of Torrington, where I had the opportunity to have a very large territory with 4 counties in Wyoming and 8 in Nebraska, with Scottsbluff, Banner, Goshen, and Platte counties being my top priorities. Prior to being employed with this co-op, I had sold and delivered fuel at another competitor in the area. With my years in the fuel and agriculture industries, I had learned a lot dealing with everything from farmers, ranchers, railroad companies, trucking companies and the random person that owns a vehicle getting their fuel from a C-store. I am what you would call a wild Braskan. I have lived my life with deep ties between Goshen County, Wyoming, and Scottsville County, Nebraska, while having the opportunity to live, travel, work all throughout the two states throughout my life. I really do not think whoever continues to come up with this idea of raising the fuel tax thinks of repercussions that it could have on the state. By raising tax, in-state trucking companies that haul materials for road projects are just going to raise their haul rates. That'll be passed on to the state, thus making the tax increase pointless. Commercial travel traffic that comes through Wyoming will stop getting fuel, where thus hurting the communities that rely on the income. Wyoming citizens will be less interested in taking vacations throughout the state. People from Nebraska going to the Front Range of Colorado will no longer be stopping in Cheyenne to get cheaper fuel. Nebraska residents just stopping to get fuel in Cheyenne is something that I intend to change and make it a destination to go to instead of Colorado. Wyoming towns that border other states will lose sales from fuel, businesses, restaurants from the neighboring states that come to those towns specifically to spend money and get cheaper fuel. This tax will have people with the means to do so to take their tanks into bordering states to be fueled or to be filled. And I am not talking about fuel tanks on a car, which they will do, but I am talking about hundreds to 1,000-gallon size tanks to get filled just for that cheaper price. And 4 cents, 5 cents to a business or a farmer, that is, I've lost a lot of sales on 2 cents. While typing the above, I realized that all the negatives that I had mentioned were actually good things in the eyes of Governor Gordon's war against fossil fuels and the push of contradiction, green base, and falsehoods that we call green energy and climate change. We have 2 major problems here. We have a very mismanaged and operated WYDOT. For as long as I can remember as a child, I've heard and seen the issues of WYDOT. Over the past few years, I have been looking into it and seeing the apparent issues. It comes from years of governors appointing friends that have no background or engineering or road operations. If WYDOT for once had a qualified state superintendent, this topic of wanting to raise fuel tax and find some other wild idea to get money would never exist. The second problem I see in this is that I see the push to not have people drive vehicles as much to push the ideology of climate change and green energy. Creating taxes or policies that limit a person's freedom of movement does not work with me at all. European countries have tried that and it never works out for them. Wyoming has a very bright future as a whole, especially with fossil fuels, and I will be doing whatever I can to make both happen. As Mayor of Cheyenne, I plan on operating a proactive approach to problems instead of being reactive, and being proactive is what the entire state should be doing. Instead of continuously using Band-Aids to attempt to fix a big problem, we need to look at the entire issue and fix it correctly. To you, driving around Wyoming in a car might seem like WYDOT is operating well, but think about driving hundreds of miles a week throughout the state, weighing 92,000 pounds, 70 feet long. You'll really see and feel how it can be unpleasant. With ending, I appreciate this time to speak, and I hope decisions are made with what your constituents want, not what someone told you to do or follow a foolish agenda. Thank you.
Hey, any questions for Mr. Knapp?
Question.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Knapp, curious, you're against a fuel tax in any way, shape, or form. I got that pretty
Yes,
clear. My question to you directly is, we're somewhere in the range of about there's different variations here, between $300 and $600 million short on our budget for our roads. So when we are that far lost on our roads across the state, what would you support to help us get to the $300 to $600 million range?
And that's
Go ahead, Mr. Knapp.
And that's the thing. Like I said, putting Band-Aids on issues. I mean, this has been a reoccurring. We got to this point of being in that deficit for over such a long time because certain things weren't being done. It could have been, like I said, the administration. You look at other states, they don't have that big a deficit within their their DOTs, so they're doing something right. And I've raising the fuel, would be one way of fixing it, but I've been trying to think on other ways as to where that revenue could be picked up to replace that. I mean, just with, I mean, I see projects across the state they're using materials in the new parking areas between Laramie and Cheyenne, or Laramie and Saratoga, using 10 inches of cement instead of asphalt millings or other products for the minimal use that those lots will get. Just overspending on projects. But I think hopefully getting the state going towards a more back to where Wyoming was with pushing fossil fuels is where I see getting a revenue from. And it can be done. It's just, I mean, if there's a will, there's a way, and just gotta happen.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Knapp? Okay, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Dan Benford, the Executive Director of AGC of Wyoming. Thought I hired someone to do this for me, but we're gonna try again. The members of the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming know firsthand the condition of our highways, roads, and bridges and how quickly our transportation system is deteriorating. Wyoming continues to use pavement preservation method to stretch the funds available for repairs and maintenance. While we are supportive of efforts to increase the funding that is available to improve the condition and safety of our roadways, we cannot support this legislation as it would not provide the increased revenue that is needed. The bill, while being well-intentioned to hold Wyoming taxpayers harmless, does not accomplish the ultimate goal of sustainable, consistent funding to maintain the asset that is Wyoming's road system. We'd like to be part of the solution in cooperation with the legislature, WYDOT, and other stakeholders to find the right solution for funding that benefits Wyoming and provides a safe, modern, and well-maintained road system into the future. We'll be committed to that endeavor in the immediate future. Basically, this is one of our best assets. Our roadway system is where commerce moves. We'd love to find a solution that can help us maintain these roads for a lifetime to give back to Wyoming citizens. This one's just not it. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Hey, thanks, sir. We're glad you're here, even if you aren't. But good to see you. So any questions for the Associated General Contractors? Okay, well, I mean, do you have any suggestions if this isn't it? Obviously, we just got the Craig report back. We're hundreds of millions in the black. Do you have a specific recommendation of what we might be able to change here to make up for this deficit?
So if you're not gonna solve a problem, bring a solution, right? We've been looking at the way Utah has funded their transportation system. They use a vehicle maintenance tax. It's very small, but it hits everything that you would do to maintain your vehicle. Those of us that drive thousands and thousands of miles have to change our tires more often. So you're paying a small tax on your tires, your oil changes. That's where we've started looking. We're not there yet. We said the immediate future, but it still said future.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
I just want to say I appreciate you looking at other states, and I've actually looked at that as well. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, one of the ideas that I had was doing a rubber tax, charging a tax on the tires, because that directly correlates to what's being used on the roadway, the more you're used on these. But when you guys look at one of the things that was just brought up a few minutes ago, you guys are certainly put through the ringer on maybe not through WYDOT, but maybe the average citizen doesn't understand what the Associated General Contractors. So the contractors that are building that rest area between Laramie and Rollins, you guys have engineering specs that are created by this, and that's what you guys have to go through.
Right.
Can you just give a rough idea of what maybe a margin is for one of your contractors when they do something like that? So we have at least an understanding, the public can get an understanding that we're not running millions of dollars and make a profit here for these contractors. These are really running pretty short margins on these projects, are they not?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to not answer that question because the number I would give you would probably not be perfectly accurate, but I would be happy to get you a accurate number for that margin. Yep, will do.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any further public comment? Anybody online? No. Okay. Anybody in the room? Okay, public comment is closed. Committee. Any motion on this particular bill? Okay, going once, going twice. That bill dies for lack of a motion. On to the next bill draft, 24 LSO 271.
Yep, so Mr. Chairman, working draft 0.4 for this one, highway user and state registration fees, it's 10-03 in the online meeting materials. This was the second bill related to registration fees and fuel taxes that the committee requested in September. The motion in the bill draft is a bit more straightforward in that the request that the committee approved was to decrease the state motor vehicle registration fee by $20 across the board, and then increase the gasoline, diesel fuel, and alternative fuel tax by 2 cents a gallon. And that's what the bill does. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd also just point out, you should have on your desk a proposed amendment for a portion of those fees that was inadvertently left out of the bill, with apologies to those who drive pickups. So Mr. Chairman, going through quickly, on page 2, lines 10, 12, and 15 decreases the state registration fee for passenger cars, school buses, and motorcycles and MPVs by $20 for each of those fees. Then beginning on page 3, the commercial vehicle registration fees, and this is page 3, 4, and 5, all of those fees are decreased by $20 each. Then on page 6, lines 11 and 12 and 16 and 17, that is the increase to the gasoline tax by 2 cents a gallon. Page 7, lines 3, 7, and 8 is an increase to the diesel fuel tax by 2 cents a gallon. And then page 7, lines 15 and 16 and 23, and the top of page 8 increases the alternative fuel tax by 2 cents per gallon. And this would be effective July 1, 2024. With that, Mr. Chairman, I stand for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Fuller? Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate the LSO's work on all this. Director Westby, you're back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Again, Darren Westby, Director YDOT. And before I turn it over to Dennis and Taylor, just appreciate the comment and the questions coming from the committee. It definitely was a task for Management Council for us to try to tackle the funding. And so I appreciate all the effort and the work from LSO and this body to try to get our heads wrapped around it. It's a significant lift to do what we need to do, and raising the bar. Whatever we're raising is raising the bar. Just I'm always cautious on how we get there to raise the bar. And I appreciate the opportunity to really study the surrounding states on how their roads are funded. It's significantly different than ours, and albeit there's multiple opportunities, I'm just not 100% sure this state is ready to do what other states are doing. To get there. And so we'll I guess I can hope that you can trust that I'm not just thinking one dimensionally on trying to come up with a solution here. We have several ideas and thoughts in pitches that we're going to continue to keep studying on this topic. Just it's too big of a topic for us to not continue to think about. So I appreciate everybody's efforts, and I just want to make sure that's on record to understand that it's not a one and done. Thank you. We walk away. This is a continuing problem to ensure that the success of YDOT's mission is so impactful and so important to not just the citizens of the state of Wyoming, not just for the businesses in Wyoming, but commercial and commerce across the country and the globe it's significant that we are successful with our mission, because if we're not, it has the ability to impact more than just the people in Laramie County or the people in your counties. It's significant. So the pride and the passion of the employees of the state of Wyoming and WYDOT, it's very evident every time I talk to somebody about how prideful they are in their section of road that they get to maintain or they get to operate. And I just want to make sure that you all and everybody listening is fully aware of the pride and passion of the people that work for us and what they get to do to ensure the impact of our mission is felt. And so thank you. And I'll turn it over to Dennis to talk about the impact of this bill specifically.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe in addition to the last tables that we had provided you, we had also provided you two others that look very similar. They're titled 24 LSO 0271 as written and 24 LSO 0271 as WYDOT understood the discussion. So the one that says that WYDOT understood the discussion, that would be relevant to the amendment that you had just talked about. So Mr. Chairman, which would you like me to talk about?
Let's do as you understood the discussion with the amendment.
So, Mr. Chairman, again, decrease of $20 for registration fees. That includes both those fees that are found in 31.3.101 and 31.18.401. So we did some analysis and took those fees down by $20. You can see the top half of the graph. The $20 reduction to 31.3.101 equates to about $14.5 million revenue loss. And the impacts to 31.18.401 equate to about an additional $467,000 for a total revenue decrease of approximately 15 million, 14.9 million. So if you move down the page, Mr. Chairman, you can see $14.9 million reduction, a 2-cent increase to fuel tax, both gas and diesel, provides us with about $9 million of revenue total in the middle of the page there. So the net revenue impact, which is highlighted for you, is a negative $6 million based on how the bill is written with the amendment, Mr. Chairman. So that, Mr. Chairman, in order for WYDOT to break even in terms of revenue, you can see at the bottom of the page, it would require a fuel tax increase of approximately 3.32 cents, or if we round that up to a whole penny, we would need a 4-cent increase on both gasoline and diesel.
Any questions for WYDOT? Okay, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was mentioned earlier, and I wanted your perspective. What is the estimated shortfall for WYDOT at present? We're looking to gain, according to this sheet, a little over $3 million. How does that compare with what you feel that you need?
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the question, Representative Pendergraft. I believe we had provided you folks some information and some follow-up to last month's meeting. That is a chart that looks like this. I'm not sure if you have that in front of you folks or not, but the short answer is our anticipated unfunded need per year is $406.7 million. So less than 1% of the need, Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft. 406.
You got follow-up?
Follow up,
Yeah, go ahead.
please. So if we're short 406 million, and we've done this and we've grabbed another 3 million, where does the rest come from? How do you make that up?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
very good question. Ultimately, it's a policy decision for you folks to wrestle with. I do believe that we have some ideas as a DOT Certainly fuel tax is, if you don't impact registration and you increase fuel tax, then there's not an offset, right? There's just a pure increase to the fuel tax. So fuel tax is certainly one way to do it. Increasing potentially the caps on severance tax and FMR is another way to do it, because YDOT receives revenues under the cap currently from both severance tax and federal mineral royalties. So that is certainly another way to do it. A sales tax is certainly, again, none of this is my opinion. I'm just answering the question, Mr. Chairman. Certainly a sales tax, in addition to the revenue streams that we currently have, would be additional revenue to YDOT, or a combination of all of those things would certainly move the needle in terms of YDOT's need for, roads. Yeah, and yeah, thank you. The director just pointed out to me that, really right now we're really kind of in a preservation mode, right? We're really trying to just maintain what we have, so that we're not doing any capacity improvements. We're not really doing any mobility improvements. There are some, but as a general rule, we're not doing those things. So we're prioritizing the projects we have right now. So what's ultimately happening is that we're deferring maintenance. And so the roads over time will deteriorate, and they will probably deteriorate quickly based on, our engineers' models.
Okay. Well, I think that is being a little bit off topic here, but I mean, that I think will be a discussion that we have. For example, in the current biennium, it's my understanding that anything above 350 some odd million in severance taxes is currently diverted, 2/3 general fund, 1/3 to the schools. I believe that expires at the end of this budget year, and both the general fund and the school foundation fund, like I mentioned, are doing well right now. So I think we may be having those sorts of discussions moving forward, and looking to see if we can get some broad buy-in for some sort of diversion there. Because the severance tax diversion currently is very small. It's like 5 or 6 million. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, 6.7 million, yes.
Okay, so pretty small number there in the grand scheme of things, so. Okay, any further questions, committee? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it. Any public comment on 24 LSO 271?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sheila Furch, Wyoming Trucking Association. Excuse me, again, the Wyoming Trucking Association does support a fuel tax increase, gasoline and diesel both. Our current position is 3 cents, but that's only because that's the last conversation we've had. The last proposal that was on the table was 3 cents. So certainly, depending on what amount would be considered, would be something we take back to our board to discuss for their support. But we feel very strongly that a fuel tax increase is something that we can support. Again, as in the last bill, we don't support the corresponding diversion of registration fees going out the other end. I want to tag along to what Mr. Benford testified at the previous bill. We're very willing to sit at the table and talk about other methods. As Director Westby mentioned, there are states that are doing other things and have the ability to do other things that we don't have the ability to do in the state of Wyoming. But certainly there are options that we can consider. We broached the topic of what Utah does several years ago, because that seems like an easy way to start talking about what's really attributing to the wear on the highways. And if you're using tires or oil or windshield wipers, perhaps a portion of that sales tax needs, or an additional sales tax needs to be talked about. There are other states that dedicate a portion of the sales tax that they're collecting right now to do that very thing, not just Utah. So certainly we're willing to talk about changes that my board would be supportive of. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it.
Chairman.
Any further public comment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, hello again. Just to clarify one thing from the last testimony, I think we can pretty safely say that the margin you were looking for is about 3%, which is fairly small considering the risk that the contractors are taking on to perform that work. So went out and made a few phone calls for you. I also want to point out that when we talk about Utah, just for the sake of the conversation, Utah is funding their highways at about 80% state funded, and we're at around 20%. So just put that out there so that if anyone wonders why Utah is coming up, they're the exact opposite of how we fund our roads. So similar to our comments on the previous bill, AGC of Wyoming cannot support this bill as it again does not provide the needed revenue boost that is necessary to make a dent in the delayed repairs and maintenance due to sustained shortfall. Even if this bill were to be amended to provide a modest gain to our road funding, we worry that the effort is not big enough and would delay further progress on modernizing the funding system. Simply put, this is not where we want to put our effort. If we want to solve this issue, we'd rather talk something that's going to make a bigger dent. I mean, we talked last night, $10 million increase to YDOT's budget barely buys a new bridge. And with inflation having gone up in the last 5 years, the way it has, our contractors have dealt with that. This just wouldn't be our solution. So we would not be in support of this bill. I'll stand for questions.
Any questions, committee? Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate you hopping on that as quickly as possible, and I appreciate just for the general public's understanding of where our contractors are at, and then also just kind of what position that puts YDOT in. You know, the bids are not going out and going crazy. They're met with engineering specs, and like you just said, if there's one little change order that can affect that 3% very quickly. So I appreciate you getting us that information.
Okay, any further questions? Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Any further public comment? Okay, anybody online? All right, one more chance in the room. Anybody? Okay, public comment is closed. Committee. Is there a motion on this bill draft? Okay, saying none, that bill dies for lack of a motion. And so before we move on, committee, I think we kind of got into it a little bit, but I think we will have some sort of discussion in the budget, maybe in the context of the budget, to see what we can do even for the next 2 years to maybe help fill some of this gap. And it may be combined with other ideas such as an efficiency study. Perhaps we could do both at the same time, especially if we're not impacting our constituents. I think that could be something that we could, two ideas that we could pair together with the objective of getting as many dollars into the highway fund as possible and being as efficient as possible with those funds. So just because we don't have a bill draft on this topic doesn't mean that this topic is over. And I think we're going to have that discussion moving forward. So I appreciate everybody's work. LSO, obviously, YDOT's, all the work that you've put into this, crunching the numbers. I think it's helped us think through some other possibilities that, to my knowledge, haven't been addressed before. So at least we have one more thing to discuss, perhaps some point in the future, among many other things that we've heard. So any other further discussion on this general topic?
Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to thank the fuel tax delegation here out of YDOT. I'm sure you guys haven't had a ton of chances to come testify before the committee. You guys have been absolute rock stars, and I really appreciate your guys' knowledge and know-how. You know, a lot of times we see the top brass. It's nice to actually see the people that are down there and doing the hard work. And your guys' knowledge on this has been indispensable. So thank you guys very, very much for all the hard work that you guys do on a day-to-day basis and providing us the information that you did. So thank you.
Any further comments or discussion, committee? Okay, cool. Let's see. Yeah, we'll move on to our, well, we're ahead of schedule. Let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break, and so we're not so far ahead. So come back at 9:45. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We'll go ahead and get going again. Next up, we have our 10:30 topic. We have a reconsideration of light and high-profile vehicles. So just a procedural note, we will have to vote to reconsider the bill. If that's what the committee wants to do, then we'll have an opportunity to amend it. What we're looking at here, and frankly, committee, I kind of went off half-cocked here at our last meeting. We threw some language in there as far as what the consequence would be for violating a light, high-profile vehicle closure that I don't think reflected the committee's intent. And we'll get Wyatt up here to explain in detail, but effectively what we did would only target Wyoming drivers. We would like to make sure that, we have a ability to treat everybody fairly regardless of where your driver's license happens to be from. So that being said, so any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
I was gonna say, I'll make the motion since I notified the committee. I'll go ahead and make the motion to reconsider 24 LSO 0085 light and high profile vehicles.
Okay, moved by Chairman Landon, seconded by Representative Namick. Okay, any discussion? I don't think this is debatable, so we'll just go ahead and do a roll call.
This is a roll call for the reconsideration of 24 LSO 85 light and high profile vehicle closures. Senator Brennan. Aye. Senator Furphy. Aye. Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Nemick.
Aye.
Representative Obermuller. Representative Obermuller, can you repeat?
That was an aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
Aye.
Representative Smith. Aye. Representative Stivar.
No.
Representative Wiley.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Brown. Chairman Boner. 13 aye.
Okay, so that motion carries barely. Okay, so we'll go ahead and have LSO go over the bill draft, if that's okay, and maybe go over the staff note and what some of the suggested language here we have for amendment. Or if you're not prepared, we can have YDOT do the same thing, whatever you'd like to do.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 85 on light and high profile vehicle closures. The committee voted to sponsor this bill draft at the August meeting and is reconsidering this. Page 1 amends Wyoming Statute 24-1-109. Subsection A is amended to state, except as provided in subsection D of this section. Subsection D states that any person who willfully fails to observe any sign, marker, warning, notice, or direction placed or given under Wyoming Statute 24-1-108 for closure to light and high profile vehicles is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction shall be subject to a fine of $2,500 and may be subject to imprisonment for not more than 30 days. Subsection D also provides that the driver of the light and high profile vehicle at the time of the violation of this subsection shall be liable upon conviction for any fine imposed under this subsection. Page 3 amends Wyoming Statute 31-7305 to provide that any person is disqualified from driving a commercial motor vehicle for a period of not less than 1 year if convicted of a first violation arising from separate incidents of violating Wyoming Statute 24-1-109D. The staff comment on the bottom of page 3 states that the committee may wish to consider the following changes, which are in bold, to apply the disqualification from driving a commercial motor vehicle for violating Wyoming Statute 24-1-109D to all CDL drivers instead of only to Wyoming CDL drivers. The changes are in bold on page 4 in subsection D to state for purposes of 49 CFR 383.51, a conviction under this subsection shall be deemed reckless driving. 49 CFR section 383.51 provides for the disqualification for serious traffic violations. Reckless driving is included in this list and results in a 60-day disqualification if convicted of 2 serious traffic violations or 120 days if convicted of 3 serious traffic violations arising from separate incidences occurring within a 3-year period. The staff comment also adds a violation of Wyoming Statute 2401-109D to the definition of serious traffic violation. Section 2 on page 4 provides an effective date of July 1, 2024, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions, committee? Okay, thank you for that summary. Appreciate it. Why not? You're back up.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can we invite Sheila up here from the Trucking Association as well? I think that might help this discussion along. Mr. Chairman, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator at WYDOT, and I'm going to try to keep to, as Chairman Brown said, letting experts talk to the issues. But I did thought I'd take a minute to kind of set the stage, and I believe that Ms. Hanson did a good job setting where we left the last meeting. And we're really going to try to not focus on the information there on page 2, the fine area. I think that was pretty well settled. I think what we were asked as we were leaving the meeting in Casper was to address that driver's license issue. And as you stated in the introduction here, as it was originally crafted, it was just the Wyoming resident. We did broaden that with the staff comments to all commercial drivers. As we continued our discussion with industry and really talking through the issue, there are occasions where people might be hauling, say, a fifth wheel vehicle that also probably should not be out there in these conditions. And if those vehicles are to blow over, they cause every bit the damage, havoc, and everything to the public and to the citizens around them. So as we continued working through that, Ms. Zimmerman here also started looking at what this might look like if you guys were to choose to broaden it. Completely a policy decision for you guys to make, but we're prepared to discuss that with you guys today. And then I believe we continued discussion with the Trucking Association, and they may have some additional thoughts or considerations for the group. And with that, I'd certainly turn it over to Ms. Zimmerman to explain where she's at with this and what she proposes for the discussion.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is Misty Zimmerman. I am the Driver Services Program Manager at WYDOT. I think Taylor said it exactly correct. I just wanted to go over some of the penalties that are written as the staff comment. It would be imposed as the staff comment is written. So we did shift that focus from the Wyoming CDL driver in the staff comment. And what that currently does is that aligns with the 3D351, which is this serious traffic violations. And what that does is that provides a 60-day disqualification for 2 years or 2 offenses, any 2 offenses. And those serious traffic violations range anywhere from texting and driving or 15 miles an hour in speed. So it's not just 2 blowovers that would cause this or 3 blowovers in the instance of the 120-day disqualification. On the non-commercial side of this, as the staff comment is written, the only penalties that would be imposed is for our repeat offenders. So that would be 4 moving violations in a 12-month period. People do get 4 moving violations in a 12-month period. However, it doesn't happen. So we don't see them as serious a penalty for the non-commercial driver as we do for the commercial driver. So as Taylor stated, if we look at potentially just moving that, staff comment talks about for the purposes of 3D351, that it would be considered a reckless driving. As a policy decision for this committee, if we moved into, and I think you all have this handout that was given to you this morning, if we moved into defining the blowover as a reckless driving offense for all persons that were cited for it, those penalties are outlined in this sheet on the right-hand side of the sheet. It does become a more severe penalty as compared to for driver's license action is what we're talking here in this handout. So I'll stand for questions on that, and I don't think I need to go and outline every single offense, but if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for WYDOT? Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this would be the guys pulling camper trailers, is that correct?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, that would be correct. If they met the definition of the light and high profile vehicle and had a blowover, then in fact they would be cited under this.
That's in the handout, right? We'd have to make an amendment beyond what's in the staff comment, and if we want to make that decision.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any further questions for Why Not? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Senator Colby, got something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for the delay. Question I have is, when you have a commercial vehicle license, driver's license, and you're driving a non-commercial vehicle, is there any difference in the impact of the penalty? Say if you're involved with some of these things you're proposing? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, there are certain instances where non-commercial violations do affect CDL, or non-CDL or CDLP holders. Our law currently is currently written, any motor vehicle operator gets this disqual. So when you have those major traffic violations that we're talking about, DUI offenses, leaving the scene of an injury, accident, those types of things, our law is written that says any driver and any motor vehicle.
Any further questions for Why Not? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sheila Furch with the Wyoming Trucking Association. Appreciate the opportunity to be up here and talk through this with WYDOT and answer any questions that you have. My board had not been able to take action on the bill previously because it was posted right after our last meeting, and then they had another meeting. So we were able to take a look at that draft. We didn't have this draft for them to review. So the pushback that I got has been addressed in the staff comments and the policy decision that you'll be able to make here on at least a portion of the bill. My members felt strongly that it should not just be penalizing Wyoming CDL holders. I mean, the whole conversation is, if you have a CDL driver, it doesn't matter if he's in state or out of state, if he's disregarding road closure signs, that's a problem. And we don't condone any driver disregarding those road closure signs. So we certainly wanted to make sure that all CDL holders were included. And we hope that whatever action you take today, you'd keep that in mind. We felt very strongly too that passenger vehicles, pickups, pulling camp trailers, pickups, pulling horse trailers, that's an issue too. And if they're disregarding a road closure sign, that's a problem. So we want to see them included as well. I know that again is a policy decision for you, but if we're talking road safety, we're talking passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles. So I think that being as broad as possible is very important. And that's where we would like to see that conversation go as you work through any amendments that you're going to make to this bill. As far as the fine itself, I don't have a position on the $2,500. I had members that felt very strongly that that was really high and they would like to see it a little bit more incremental. And I had other ones that seemed to be okay with $2,500. So again, policy decision for you guys. We certainly may have a stronger position one way or another should this bill go forward during the interim, and I'll be happy to give you my board's position at that time for that. I know that the presentation that WYDOT was able to make to you at your last meeting was kind of abbreviated just because of time, but we were able to discuss the new I call it the targeted program. I don't know what WYDOT's calling it, but to me, it's kind of a targeted road closure, not just very broad, light, high profile vehicles. Okay, what is that? No one can define that. There isn't a definition in this bill. Just want to point that out again too, because there isn't a definition of a light, high profile vehicle. But WYDOT has implemented that system. Probably some of you driving here saw signs on the interstate. I saw them on I-25 coming down yesterday that the road is closed between Wheatland and Cheyenne to enclosed trailers with a GVW of less than 40,000 pounds. Pretty descriptive. And to me, much better than light, high profile. So my members are very supportive of seeing that program that WYDOT is implementing proceed. We would like to suggest, and again, here's a policy decision for you guys, to put this on the back burner for now, knowing that it's a tool, but to give that targeted program a season to see what a difference that will make, to see if that is helping with the blowovers that we've been seeing in the past. Some people don't really think a fine is much of a deterrent because a lot of people don't even know what the fine is until after the fact when they're cited. There are drivers that probably passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, they're driving down the road today, not giving it much thought that, gosh, if this happens, I'm going to get a $2,500 fine or a $750 fine. Again, we don't condone any driver bypassing a road closed sign, whether it's for just the road is closed to everybody or the road is closed to you under 40,000 or under 60,000 or whatever it may be. But I just don't know that sometimes we're talking about deterrence, and hopefully we want to make this a deterrent, but we want to make sure it is. So to be able to give that program a chance to see how it's happening, we would certainly be supportive of that, knowing that we can come back and revisit this issue in the future if it's not having a change in what's happening on the interstate systems or wherever the road closure signs will happen.
Any questions for the Trucking Association? Yeah, well, I mean, don't you think that if YDOT were to communicate what the fine is, that they would know then, obviously? I mean, so I think that maybe, there's some communication there that could happen where, do you think that's something that's feasible?
Mr. Chairman, I do think that's feasible, and that certainly would probably help because right now that's not being done for anything, for any traffic violations. I don't think there's a lot of pre-communication. It's after the fact when you're being written that ticket. So probably communications that way, that would make a difference. I agree completely with that. Enforcement's going to be key, and I think the more tools you give to enforcement, the better off it is. I don't know that we have enough manpower right now to do pre-enforcement. A lot of times what's going to happen is when the blowover happens, then that's when this fine is going to be implemented because obviously you were lighter than you thought. So it's going to be some of that, getting that message out there that, yeah, if we see you and there's a road closure sign and we know that you're probably not that weight or more, we're going to pull you over. So I think that's going to be part of what has to happen as well, is just getting that message out there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to elaborate that a little bit, so if they have it posted and they say, something under 26,000 GVW, whatever it may be, road closed, then also add in fine information on that same electronic sign that would scroll across there and say what the fine is. What do you think about an idea like that? So the way to be, somehow they're gonna have to convey the message to these truck drivers while they're driving. So what's your opinion about that methodology of information? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, if we're going to look at the fine as being a deterrent, it has to be communicated. So I think that would be something that would have to be considered.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dan Benford again with AGC of Wyoming. I lost my notes for this one, but I think I've got it. I would actually echo almost everything that Mrs. Furch just said. That's my board and members have also kind of thought through the same process. The term light high profile being ambiguous is not helpful in the situation. I drove past the sign yesterday as well and this morning and thought, enclosed 40,000 gross vehicle weight, that's something that we can look at. And also, they had the same concern about the fines. How many drivers in Wyoming know what the fine is for any of the violations they could possibly be hit with? I was sitting there thinking, I used to work at Rock River School and left Laramie every morning and drove out there. And for some reason, I have a memory that when they closed that road, there was a fine posted on it saying road closed, fine of up to $500, I think. And I had clearance to go around the gates, but knowing what that fine was, I think was powerful and would be a deterrent. So if we have the ability to put up there a description of what light high profile is, we could also put the fine up there. And I think those two things together would be very helpful in this. The only other thing my board was concerned about is the difficulty finding CDL drivers right now. And if we're targeting this bill to only CDL drivers who are making the choice to willfully violate a road closure, It's just one more thing that's making it harder for a CDL driver to want to stay in the position. This should be something that would go out to the entire traveling public. If anyone violates this, pulling a trailer, we'd like to see them added to that as well. Decision for you. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thanks, sir. Any questions? Okay, thanks for your
Thank you.
testimony. Any further public comment? Welcome back, sir.
I think adding more than, like the last gentleman said, adding more than just CDL holders would be very beneficial. Wyoming sees a very high traffic of commercial campers being transported through the state. They are not required to have CDLs. And that's one thing that is easily blown over. So changing that to just having a driver's license, period, and their whatever trailer, where it may be more open to that. I think that'd be very well, because I mean that is a huge number of the blowovers in Wyoming. There are those CDL camper transporters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Any questions? Oh. Any questions, committee? Okay, thanks, sir. Any further public comment? Anybody online? Okay, last chance in the room. All right, public comment is closed. Committee. Moved by Representative Stivar. Okay, we have some potential amendments here, committee. So what's, okay, what's the amendment? Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay. Good job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we do both here in the house, so.
Okay, so moved by Representative Stivar, seconded by Representative O'Hearn. All right, so now we'll discuss any potential amendments, committee. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, line 14, and page 4, line 3. Mark out 750 and make that 1,000, so it's a little closer to the 2,500. Kick that fine up for somebody for running a road closed, going around it.
So you want to raise the other fine?
Yeah,
then?
from
Okay.
750 to 1,000.
Okay.
Page 2, line 14.
Page 2, line 14, and page 4, line 3.
Okay, so we're working off the bill draft, not the staff comments. Maybe just be page 2 for now.
Okay,
But yeah, I think we get your intent there.
well, that is a staff comment. Never mind
Staff
about
comment
page 4.
is what page 2 is. That's what-
Right, that's the same thing. That's what I'm saying. So, okay, just make sure we're clear. Okay,
All right.
all right. So you want to raise fine the $1,000 from 750. Okay. For every other type of violation. Okay, do I have a second? Second by Representative Pendergraph. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm probably going to, I understand the intent on this. The only problem that I have with this is we typically put, when it starts to come to other fines in our code, 750 is kind of the threshold for misdemeanors and where we go with that. So without more understanding as to where we're at on that, I'm probably going to vote no on this, but if the committee likes it, that's fine.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Okay, that motion fails. Any further amendments? Senator Culp.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just move all the amendments that were issued by the LSO as written in the document? That would be my motion.
Okay, so move the staff comment to make the first, I mean, the obvious correction, I'd say, to
Yeah.
to make it apply to everybody, not just Wyoming CDL holders. Okay, seconded by Representative Brown. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. And we also have a suggestion to further broaden it to all drivers, not just CDL holders. So I don't know if we have a motion there so we can discuss it or not. Okay, moved by Senator Palpas, seconded by Representative O'Hearn. Any discussion on that policy consideration? And also you, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, with you and the committee's permission, just latitude to craft the language appropriately, as appropriate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
so just for the public's benefit, it looks like the statutory reference is 31-5229. And this would be, movement to reckless driving. And if I get this wrong, why not please correct me? But first violation be a 90-day suspension, second, 6-month, and third, 1-year revocation. So that's what we're talking about here. And that'll apply to everybody, not just CDL holders. So, go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman and Senator Cole.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask briefly, I do apologize, I was out of the room with this, but maybe the lieutenant colonel or captain, as far as what the impacts of this are to the troopers out there, whether or not they're going to be subjected to their determination of what is a high-profile vehicle. I guess that's kind of my concern about extending this open, is that the troopers are then put in the position of having to make that determination. Is a trailer that's weighted down, is it a horse trailer that's goosenecked, those types of things, are they already doing this, or are they in a position where they're going to feel comfortable making that determination out on the road and issuing these types of citations immediately, I guess, because I do appreciate the idea behind this. I just want to make sure that the troopers are ready to go with this as well.
Okay. Welcome, Highway Patrol. Go ahead and proceed with your testimony. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, Josh Walther, Lieutenant Colonel for the Wyoming Highway Patrol. Essentially the way we take this is if they blow over, they were too light and high profile. I mean, it's really that simple. In terms of fine amount, that was discussed a little bit, or the education of it. We always take an education first approach. It's a little bit difficult in these because it's not somebody sped or somebody ran a stop sign, they rolled over in their semi truck. So it makes it a little more difficult. So typically if folks write that citation, they're going to write it if there's a rollover, regardless of whether there's an educational component or not. But that's it. As far as what is light and high profile, I get we're trying to define it with a amount of with a weight, but essentially that's it. They roll over, they were too light or too high profile or both.
And that definition is vital. That's something that's not in that statute. I don't think it should be in statute, so hopefully that bears fruit also. So, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's your opinion about, say you have a non-commercial driver going down the road with a trailer and frankly doesn't know how to operate his trailer brakes, doesn't understand the fundamentals of towing? I mean, how often do you find a situation like that where it was just frankly incompetence of the driver and not so much a light vehicle? They corrected too sharply. They did a lot of things. What's been your experience when you've investigated, say, trailer blowovers in this particular case? What's your opinion about why that happened? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, I personally, from investigating a lot of rollover crashes, really with the blowovers, it wasn't lack of knowledge of trailer brakes or anything like that. It was traveling on a road they shouldn't have with too light of a trailer. It's going back to the comment made with the weight. It's so difficult to pin a weight on this. We're trying to do it as best as we can. We're making that weight pretty high, but it depends on load configuration too. Trailer height depends on a lot of things. So yeah, there is some ignorance out there, especially with people towing big fifth wheels, 2 and 3 axle fifth wheels that have never towed anything before. Now they're going down the road with their pickup and a huge fifth wheel. So that does exist. in terms of trailer brakes and what speed to travel, and they just shouldn't be going. If there's any question at all as to whether they should be going, they shouldn't be. So I don't know how much is ignorance and how much is just traveling on the road they shouldn't be, quite frankly. I didn't experience a lot of folks that, didn't understand the equipment or the trailer brakes or towing setups or whatever it was. It was more just they shouldn't have been out there, period, regardless of what their skill level is. If you're driving with an 80-mile-an-hour crosswind with an empty trailer, chances are you're going to blow over regardless of what your understanding is of trailer brakes and setup.
Yeah, follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do you believe that we should consider a professional driver, CDL license holder, the same as a non-professional driver, and they should have the same, expected to have the same knowledge on driving and experience? Do you think we should consider them the same in this case? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, Chairman, Dustin Reagan with Wyoming Highway Patrol. That one's also difficult to answer, just because, as previously testified as well, you do have commercial drivers that are non-CDL, but they're still trained and held to a little bit of a higher standard. I think it's difficult to just say, in this instance with a road closure or blowover, who should be held at a higher standard. It should just be, I mean, it's a road closure. If it's a closure and there's weather conditions, that should be pretty common sense to where everybody can kind of pay attention to it and abide by it. So if there was going to be a penalty for this one, I think it actually is fair to be more consistent on this, because when it comes to a standard road closure, when they're going around our gate, it's the standard fine. So a blowover should pretty be, I mean, similar to that as well. I think there's a lot of aspects, like the Lieutenant Colonel testified to as well. Configurations are different, road conditions are different, but also where are these drivers coming from? You know, when we look at our crash stats for our state, especially CMV crash stats, the majority of our crashes are out-of-state drivers, out-of-state carriers. A lot of them are not used to our winds, used to our roads and our weather conditions. But if we can do better with, you know, putting on the information on those signs, maybe putting that penalty on the sign with the weight barrier or things like that, maybe that education in and of itself could help prevent some of these crashes. So I think in this specific statute, they should all be treated fairly to have that consistency, because it is a easy blanket weather condition and a closure.
Any further questions for Highway Patrol, Mr. Co-Chairman?
To either one of you guys, when we have a blowover, whether it's a fifth wheel trailer, whether it's a cargo trailer that's being towed by a Ford Explorer, whatever the case is, you guys have to go out and investigate what has occurred. You guys are out there on the road dealing with this. We've all seen the video over there by Rollins where the truck is blown over on top of the trooper's vehicle. I mean, those are the types of things that we're concerned about. It's the safety and the security of the troopers. It's the safety and the security of the general public, and the road closure, the economic impact of a road closure when one of these goes down. How long do you guys suspect on a winter, in a given winter, when these winds are blowing this hard, how many hours do you guys suspect you guys are out there dealing with these types of things, as opposed to dealing with the other topics that you guys are charged with as troopers? What is the amount of time that you guys are spending dealing with these blowovers?
Mr. Chairman, committee, I can't give you an exact number of hours, but it's ridiculous. It's a lot of time spent on blowovers. Not to mention the follow-up crashes that are involved with that. You know, anytime you close a road, it's changing traffic patterns. So it causes a lot of issues. I don't know that we could even take a stab at a definitive number of hours, but it's a lot of time.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, guys, for being here. So you see on the sign, says high winds today, 60 plus miles an hour. And you see roads closed to high profile and, you know, low weight trailers or whatever, however it's stated. So if the road's closed to them, do you guys sit at the road closure site and just or is it up to that person to decide whether they should pull over and stop? Or do you ever suggest to any of those drivers to say, hey, guys, or put an officer out there to say, hey, you guys shouldn't be driving right now?
Right.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, we just don't have the staffing to put
Yeah,
people out in
that's what I
closures
thought.
like that. And most of what we're doing in terms of the blowovers is in response to the blowovers, not actual proactive enforcement, just again, simply because we don't have the time. With the weight limit on there, we may have a little better resources here once we know that we're sending the automated notifications to the drivers themselves, putting in the ports and other forms and methods. We may be able to be more proactive about it, but right now we just don't have the resources.
Yeah.
Except for on road closures, we try to do the best we can to put someone on a gate when we actually close the road to all traffic. We do the best we can, but even then, we don't have enough troopers to man all the gates.
And Mr. Chairman, so just like anybody who's driving, whether you're going to drive in wind or whatever, you're responsible to be safe, right?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, that's correct.
Okay.
Any further questions for Highway Patrol? Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, so we are working the bill still. Do we get a motion to?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on the motion to add, expand it to everybody, not just CDL drivers. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. And that motion carries. Any further discussion on the bill? Okay, let's do a roll call.
This is a roll call to sponsor 24 LSO 0085 light and high-profile vehicle closures. Senator Brennan. Aye. Senator Furphy. Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Nemec.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
Aye.
Representative Smith. Aye. Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Representative Wiley.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Brown.
Aye.
Chairman Boner.
Aye.
That's 14 aye.
All right. So moving right along, we have another bill draft dealing with CDLs, hazardous material endorsement. So this is another topic that was brought to our attention, and it deals with how you will affect those who are between 18 and 20 years old, I think, with a hazardous designation on their CDL. So we'll have LSO go ahead and do a brief summary of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 246, Commercial Driver's License Hazardous Materials Endorsement. Section 1 amends Wyoming Statute 317304A2A to provide that a licensed driver who has attained the age of 18 years may receive a hazardous materials endorsement for a commercial driver's license. Section 2 provides that the Department of Transportation shall promulgate any rules necessary to implement this act. Section 3 provides a split effective date. Section 1 is effective July 1, 2024, while the rulemaking in Section 2 and the effective date is effective immediately. And I'll stand for any questions.
Hey, any questions? Hey, thank you. Simple enough concept, I think. So, hey, why not? You're up again.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, I'm Misty Zimmerman. I'm the program manager for driver services. The bill you have in front of you is definitely a policy decision. The committee at the last meeting had asked us to provide information about our surrounding states that also have 18 to 20-year-old hazmat drivers, and I believe in your packet you'll find that number. Additionally, I was asked regarding potential funding impacts in those states, and unfortunately I haven't gotten any feedback from those states at this time. Right now, currently of the 7 states that we went to, 3 of them are in fact allowing 18 to 20-year-olds to haul hazmat and 4 are not. Additionally, as far as funding is concerned, we have requested a formal letter from FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, on potential impacts to funding if in fact we do go forward with this. However, we've not received any formal information or feedback from them at this time. One thing that we're talking about here, and especially in the state of Wyoming, at any given time, we have between 50 and 100, give or take, 18 to 20-year-old CDL drivers. So that population is not very great as it stands right now. So in fact, when I spoke with North Dakota, they do in fact allow 18 to 20-year-old CDL holders. They currently have 2 out of their entire population that have chosen to get that hazardous materials. So obviously it goes into a much deeper than just whether or not the state allows it. So the other thing that I wanted to point out to this committee, and as it stands, the 18 to 20-year-old only allows for the transportation of intrastate commerce. And this, in the back page of that handout that you were given, defines what intrastate commerce is. And I think that's important as a consideration, and I think that's important as we look forward and move forward with this as the term determination. That is very specifically outlined in federal regulation. And so if at any time a good or service passes into another state, it becomes interstate commerce. So, or if it originates outside of the state, is dropped, picked up by a driver and driven between 2 points, it's still interstate commerce. So it's very tricky. So I think the other thing, the last thing that we have to talk about is the fact that currently right now there's nothing in statute or law that prohibits this.
Any questions? Right. Now, on that last point, is there any desire on part of the agency to move forward with rulemaking to accomplish this goal?
I would let that be a policy decision for you guys.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
So kind of right along those same lines. So there's nothing that prohibits this. This was brought to our attention by Commerce up in the northeast part of the state, specifically because last year they were having a hard time getting propane. My question is we could certainly, we've had this discussion multiple times in this committee. We could certainly pass a bill and direct you guys to go through with this. But do we need to, right? Is this one of those things that we can sit back and we can say that the committee directive is for you guys to start working with industry to make sure that this is taken care of, so we don't have to worry about this passing or failing out on the floor? Is that something you guys are ready to do if we were to give that directive and put an official letter, as opposed to having to try to pass a piece of legislation out on the floor? And potentially, for that matter, raising red flags with Washington, D.C. This is going to make probably more waves in the pool than if we just made a directive to you guys to start this process.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I think we've had this conversation before previously. The reason that we previously did not allow this was of the concern on the impact of funding. And as Taylor or Mr. Rossetti spoke at the last meeting, we may have been guided down the wrong path. And so that's why we've asked for that formal interpretation of this. And so I think that would be the direction that we would go, is based on that information that's provided back, because our funding is very important to us. We rely a lot on that MCSAP funding and those high priority grants. And that was what was prohibiting us or making us choose to not go down that road previously.
Mr. Chairman.
So go ahead, Senator Pops.
Yeah, do you know whether Montana, Nebraska, or North Dakota have had federal impact to their funds? Because they allow it, right?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, I've reached out to those jurisdictions to get that information. And as the information that I have right now, I don't believe that anybody has had funding impacts, but I can't confirm that 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think back in the spring when we first brought this up, I mentioned having been a motor sergeant in Europe and having young drivers, commercial drivers, at the age of 18 and 19 that were driving around Europe with all sorts of loads. If the federal government can do that, it seems to me we'd be pretty well able to defend ourselves from them trying to jerk our chain. Thanks.
Ms. Zimmerman? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Public comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sheila Furch, Wyoming Trucking Association. When you first began discussing this, we were kind of hesitant because we were concerned about jeopardizing the CDL program, not just the funding, perhaps sanctions. And that was a huge concern for my members. And we were being given information similar to what YDOT was receiving, that, yeah, that was going to be an issue. So that's why we have not supported this in the past. But if that's not the case, certainly this will be helpful. It may only help a small percentage, but there are carriers out there who would consider that and who have 18 to 21-year-old drivers right now that are hauling intra-state hauls that this might be applicable to. So certainly that's a decision that ultimately rests on the shoulder of those carriers. They have to make sure those drivers meet the qualifications and are safe, and that they feel comfortable putting them in their vehicle with a load of hazardous materials. So to have that extra tool would be helpful. And as long as it doesn't jeopardize the current CDL program in the state of Wyoming, we're certainly supportive of the effort.
Any questions for the Trucking Association? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dan Benford, Executive Director of AGC of Wyoming. This is my last one. Along that same line, AGC of Wyoming supports this effort to allow hazmat endorsements for intrastate CDL drivers that are 18 years and older, with the caveat that it does not cause a detriment to the state's ability to recruit, train, and certify CDL drivers. We'd be very concerned that we would possibly lose that ability as well by overstepping. But we do have a serious shortfall on CDL drivers, and we support Wyoming businesses having as many options at their disposal as possible to fill those positions. With that, I will stand for questions.
Okay. Any questions, committee? Thank you, sir. Any further public comment? Anybody online? Okay, last chance in the room. Okay, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move the bill. Moved by Senator Kolb. Second by Representative Ahern. Any discussion? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Committee, my only discussion on this is going into a budget session. I think it's really important for us to go ahead and have a second horse in this race. I think we could probably also work as chairman at the committee's directive. We could certainly draft a letter that would say, why not we would like you guys to pursue this based upon the determination from the feds. My biggest concern is the amount of bills that are going to be presented. I just heard a stat yesterday as we were leaving. The amount of bills that are coming out of committees for interim already is far greater than what we've normally seen. So just as a heads up that when we start passing these types of bills, just to get them out there and get them moving, the chances of everything that we have passed here as a committee making it through the finish line gets pretty tough. So I think it is important for us to send the message out there that we do support our local industries and the people that are out there. So I will support the motion on this bill, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a letter come out from the two chairmen as well as a directive to YDOT to say that this is what we anticipate. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Chairman Brown. We need to send a letter from this committee directing YDOT to do this and put a date on it so they get back with this committee and let us know what we need to do. And if it's not done, then we run the bill.
Right, and so, yeah, the motion is on the bill, and this is obviously our last meeting, so let's hopefully stay focused on the discussion here, whether we sponsor the bill or not. But certainly, there's still some information that's hanging out there, but I mean, the fact that there's 3 other states just in the region that do this with no repercussions, that gives me quite a bit of comfort. So any further discussion? And certainly, if you can vote for this bill and still have another motion later to send a letter, that I think they're, might as well have 2 horses in the race, as the co-chairman said. So, okay, any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call.
This is a roll call vote to sponsor 24 LSO 246, commercial driver's license, hazardous materials endorsement. Senator Brennan? Aye. Senator Furphy? Aye. Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Pappas? Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Nemec?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Please repeat.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Representative Wiley?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Brown? Aye. Chairman Boner?
Aye.
14 ayes.
Okay, any further discussion or motions on this topic? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion that we authorize the chairman to send a letter to YDOT expressing your interest in them changing their rules through rulemaking to allow this class of CDL to be issued in the city of Wyoming, as previously discussed.
Second.
Okay, moved by Senator Kolb, seconded by Representative Wiley. Any discussion? Sending a letter. Not sure if we can direct YDOT to do anything via letter. That'd be make our jobs a lot easier. But I think the motion, encapsulate what we're trying to do here. So, okay. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. Okay, that passed unanimously. Okay, so anything else on the CDL topic before we move on? Okay, next up, we have the Adopt a Highway update, and probably just, we'll just go ahead and go through both the topics here, Adopt a Highway and CDL downgrade rulemaking, and just cover those at once if that's okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Tom Dehoff, the Assistant Chief Engineer for YDOT for Operations. We do continue to administrate the Wyoming Adopt a Highway program. We did have volunteer groups go out this last season and picked up the litter. We saw about less than half of the contracted areas were picked up this season by our volunteer groups. That was kind of discussed at the last meeting. We are seeing a decline in the volunteer groups going out. So the district engineers are evaluating those areas and taking down the signs that were not contractually met. And so they are in the process of removing those, and we will store those signs because I'm sure the volunteer groups that we are not able to contact will reach out to us, but really there's not too many that will. We'll hang on to those just in case we have to put it back up. But we will not put it back up until they reach the contractual requirements again of picking up twice in 1 year, and then we'll put it back up. So, Mr. Chairman, that's our update on the Adopt a Highway. Any questions?
Any questions, committee? Okay, I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see if that generates a response. And so you don't have any contact information for these volunteer groups? Is that what I heard? Or there's no, you don't have any information at all, or?
Mr. Chairman, we do have contact information, but what happens mainly with these volunteer groups is they have so many changes that they forget to give us their information in order to find that. So, it may be 50-50 if even that, so.
That makes sense. Any further questions on this topic? Okay, appreciate your diligence. Hopefully we'll get a response. Okay. And then we have some rulemaking update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator. If you guys recall, you guys did direct us through rule to do a rule. No, actually, I think it was a joint agreement. Certainly, we would take your directive, and I would go back to that last discussion. And it seems pretty clear this body is interested in that. We'll certainly await the letter just to make sure that we can meet what it is you guys ask us to do, but we're certainly willing to take that lead. Specific to the medical downgrade, that rule is in the Wyoming Department of Transportation, Chapter 1. That rule is called Driver's Licenses and Motor Vehicle Safety. We actually, at the last meeting, were in the period of finalizing that rule. Due to the conversation that we had with you guys, we actually pulled that out and chose not to move it through adoption. That was actually going to slow us down. So what we actually did was we pulled it back. We added the language on the medical downgrade per your guys' direction. And that is currently at the Attorney General's office pending legal review. The next step would then be to go to the governor's staff, and then that would be released out for public comment. I think what I will do is, as that goes out, I will notify the committee through the chairs. That allows anybody on the committee and anybody in the public to provide comment. And that rule certainly will have more things in it than just the medical downgrade, but it will have the medical downgrade language as we discussed. And pending the letter on the hazmat endorsement, this will be the same rule that would go into. So depending on timing, and certainly would notify you, we may pull it back again prior to pushing it through so that we're not doing a rule, getting it through and doing another rule. But we will keep you guys in the loop and ensure that you guys know what's going on.
Okay, any questions on that committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Wiley.
Thank you for all the cooperation, Mr. Rossetti. I have another question kind of to grow on this thought that we've been working on during the interim. Is there any way that we could look on giving certified training back to the private industry where they could have a certified trainer able to train CDL drivers and then move forward without having to send them to school and go through that, multi-week process of losing your workforce?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Wiley, Ms. Zimmerman can give you some great information on that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, let me just make sure I understand your question first. So you're asking if we as a state can give the ability to train to private industry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so in the past, before we've had this current update on how you obtain a CDL, there were certain aspects of statute and stuff where it was allowed to have private industry have certified trainers so that they could help train their own CDL drivers. Now I think the process is you have to go to a school. It takes several weeks to several $1,000s. Is there anything that we could do to maybe reinstitute that to where we could have these certified trainers through the private industry be able to help certify new CDL drivers?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, thank you for that clarification. So currently, right now, the state of Wyoming does not have any statutory requirements as far as the training of CDL driver goes. We have testing requirements that a driver is to be tested. I believe what you're speaking out about is the Federal Motor Carrier Entry-Level Driver Training Program, which is federally mandated. That mandate requires that any person that gets a new CDL, upgrades a CDL, or obtains passenger, school bus, or hazardous materials endorsement go through the federally mandated program. Nothing is and that training provider has to be registered with the training provider registry with FMCSA. There is nothing preventing any carrier from becoming a registered training provider with FMCSA. They just have to meet the standard qualifications of that federal regulation. So John's Trucking in Laramie can become an ELDT provider, entry-level driver training provider, as long as they meet the qualifications. We've worked with several, the school district, Wyoming Pupils Transportation Association, YDOT's trainers, several private motor carriers, lots of city and government agencies, in order to help them facilitate becoming trainers. But statutorily, YDOT has nothing to do with the training aspect. It is simply testing. At any time, if anyone is interested in working through that process, I've encouraged them to reach out to me, and I'll get them with the right people as far as that goes to help facilitate getting the approval to be a training provider, but it is under FMCSA.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, committee? Oh, let's on the update that we have right now. Nope. Okay, and we might have some more general questions here. Go Senator Kolb. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a general question about the WOW link money that was freed up during the last last session, or you were back funded. What is that money being used for that was purposed for WyoLink in the past. What are you doing with that $7 million, as I understand it? What is it going towards currently? That's my general question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Just when you thought you were off the hook, you get a.
Just when I thought we were
There
gonna
you
have an
go.
interim without WyoLink.
Yeah, almost made it. Almost made it.
Just a little. Oh, man, we were this close, Senator.
Okay, so and maybe give the committee a little background there. I think we made some changes to the way we made, funding WyoLink, and just a little overview, I guess, and an update, if you will.
Mr. Chairman, Dennis Byrne, Chief Financial Officer with WYDOT. So just as the background that you asked for, Mr. Chairman, in the last session, the legislature approved $8.6 million of biennium in general fund dollars to support WyoLink. Prior to that, we had been receiving some mineral revenue grant money that usually goes to the locals. The legislature had chosen to give us that money on behalf of the locals for their cost, their share of the use of WyoLink. So, Mr. Chairman, we are actually scheduled to have a conversation with the state budget department here in the next couple of weeks about what we're going to do with that money specifically. So I don't have the answer for it now. Right now, it's still sitting in the account. We will have a conversation with the state budget department as to whether we turn that money back so that the locals have access to it, or if there's other options available, Mr. Chairman. So at this point, that's where we stand.
Yeah, follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you could fund a efficiency study with some of that money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That was a statement, not a question, for sure. Okay. So looks like we're just about wrapped up here, committee. Obviously, this is your chance to ask any general questions, make general statements. We'll say it looks like we have 4 WYDOT related bills, 2 military department bills, and 1 geodetic bill. Perhaps we can have just a little summary of all the things that we've sponsored if staff is ready to do that. But I think that's the general breakdown. And so if it's okay with the committee, the chairman will make a determination which where to start those bills and which chamber. But if we can just have a summary.
Yep, Mr. Chairman. So members of the committee, from the last meeting, the committee sponsored 3 bills: 24 LSO 89 alternative fuel tax electricity amendments, 24 LSO 84 military department emergency fire suppression account, 24 LSO 83 the acceptance of retrocision, the jurisdiction on federal military installations. In this meeting, Mr. Chairman, the committee sponsored 24 LSO 247 state plane coordinate system, 24 LSO 272 the fuel tax information deadline, 24 LSO 85, the bill on the light high profile vehicles on reconsideration, and then 24 LSO 246, the CDL hazmat for 18 to 21.
Right, yeah, so we have to at least have one of those WYDOT bills start in the House because it's the electric vehicle tax. Right. And we'll probably just keep them all together, WYDOT in the House, military and the geodetic bill in the Senate, and everybody's okay with that. That's probably what we'll do. Okay, any other discussion? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to take just a brief second here. Thank the committee for their work. You guys put in, a lot of you guys' first interim work, but you guys put in a lot of hard work, a lot of testimony. I'd also like to thank WYDOT, military department, all the people that have come to testify. We had a big lift this interim. Had somebody mention that this kind of feels like Groundhog Day when it comes to the fuel tax discussion and all those types of things, and it certainly does. But I will say that it should get your gears turning a little bit. Start thinking of some different ideas as we're going through these. We heard some great ideas already, but next interim, it's not too early to start thinking about interim topics for next year already. We get those ideas rolling, the more information we can start working with individuals within the department and associated people that have an interest in these areas. But LSO, thank you guys for all of your hard work. I know you guys worked your tails off, so thank you guys. And to WYDOT that sits here and does this every single day, and to the military department that works day in and day out, thank you guys for all you guys have done for our state. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, good work, committee. See you in February. not sooner. So, it looks like with that, we're adjourned. So, and so Director, that got a tour here. So. Mhm. Mhm. All right, well, that's the question. Can we head over there right now? Would that work, or do you want to wait for the scheduled time, or?